have to do that. So, all right.
Got it now.
So when Debbie, Kaylee, and I started talking about risk taking, there's a whole bunch of stories that kept on popping into my head that I thought were really great examples of risk taking, whether it be a story of Amazon, the Pixar story, whatever. But when it came down to it, I really started thinking about it. I couldn't get away from this story. How many people here, you can just give me a thumbs up in the window here, have Disney Plus and or have seen the Imagineering story? Okay, if you haven't seen it, Diane and I were talking about this. We really hope they put this out on DVD or something like that, because it's just a phenomenal documentary. It's 6 episodes, so it's essentially like a 6-hour documentary. But it tells you that story of the Imagineers and how they started, and how, if you don't know what Imagineer is, back when Walt Disney was starting Disneyland, he needed some people to help him create these rides and create these attractions and come up with new technologies and innovations that would immerse people in this experience. And they affectionately got to be known as the Imagineers, and that stuck with them all these years. And the Imagineers, the one thing they do really well is they have these problems and they persevere like crazy to come up with incredible solutions for them. And it helped create this magical world of Disneyland. But the thing is, there's been different CEOs since Walt died. Different people were running the company, and some of them valued what the Imagineers did, others didn't. Sometimes they put a lot of money into their part of Disney, and other times they didn't. But when you watch this, you get to see that whole fluctuation of what they've been doing for Disney all this time. One episode that really stuck out to me with this idea of risk taking, and it was an episode that they started talking about 3 parks that they built, which were failures, okay? And the 3 parks were California Adventure, the Hong Kong Disneyland, and Walt Disney Studios Park in France, which is a sister one to Disneyland Paris. Well, they didn't succeed. They did something quickly and they thought it would work, and it didn't. Well, along came a new CEO, Bob Iger, and he wanted to fix a lot of this stuff. So he decided, he's going to take some risks and go and try to fix these things. So this is, we say fix a amusement park, that's billions of dollars, right? It's not just like, hey, let's run out there and paint here and do this and fix it all. So he took this huge risk and decided to do this. And he had to identify his best people to fix this stuff, and that was the Imagineers. Okay, he told them to go figure out what they could fix in these parks and do it. And the one that I'm just going to focus on is California Adventure, because I remember when California Adventure opened, I have a good friend who lives out that way, and she was like, oh, it's horrible, don't come out here. My favorite quote about this place was from an Imagineer, and he says in the documentary, he says, I liked it better as a parking lot. I mean, that tells you a lot about how bad this park was. Well, they focused on some of the things that they knew that wasn't working. They were essentially taking a retake. They were looking at their mistakes, sharing them with each other, and figuring out how can we fix this. So they realized that people didn't like the fact that when you went into California Adventure, you could tell you weren't somewhere else. Like you could see power lines from outside of the park and, the things that weren't part of the park. It took you out of that immersive environment. So they started talking about things, and they thought about this power of yet and how we could fix these things. It might not be good now, but it's not good now, but it will be, right? And they really went to town and changed a lot of the main things, and they added a whole new section, that Cars theme thing for Pixar, and they made it a successful park. They were able to fix this by going in there and persevering and taking risks. Then they did the same thing in Hong Kong Disneyland. And they're still doing that over in the one over in Paris, the Walt Disney Studios Park. They started adding more stuff there to improve it. When you watch this documentary, it's such an incredible example of how taking risks leads to tons of failures, but also to some incredible innovations and some just incredible things. I'll never forget the time I first went on Soarin', which was added to California Adventure, but I went to it down in Epcot. And all I could think of was, this was an incredible experience. It wasn't what the ride was actually doing. It was what the ride was making me think I was doing. And that only comes with being given the chance to take risks and fail and learn from those mistakes and keep on doing stuff. Because then when they did that, then they took that and they applied that technology to the new one that's down there in Avatar, where you ride on the dragon things. I can't think of the name of the ride right now, but I just remember that there had 3D glasses, and you ride the seat and it breathes under you like you're on the animal. It's just absolutely incredible. And it's just an amazing story of what taking risks can get you. So when I think about that, I think about how that translates into the classroom, and that leads us to these two articles.
So the first article is called Ink, and this is from a business perspective, kind of on, taking risks. And so for us as teachers, promoting what people and what skills are needed in the real world are always one of our ideas. How do we make this relevant? So even in the business world, things like, number one, modeling risk-taking behavior, defining smart risk and those limits that associate with those. Identify your best risk takers and unleash them, and then create a safe environment for risk taking. And number 5 is about rewarding smart failures. And if you want to check out this, you can take your phone and check out that link, because it's a pretty cool article to look at.
And I'll put those links here in a little bit after I'm done talking. So we've been talking about all of these examples in the business world, and you have all of these ideas of different ways to take care of all these risks, promote risk in your classroom. Let's bring it back to the education setting for a second, because all of these risk-taking behaviors, all of these strategies can be used in the classroom to benefit our students. Because students that aren't afraid to take risks, that aren't afraid to fail in the classroom, are ones that are going to learn a lot more about what it is you're trying to teach them, and learn more about themselves and learn more about the world. So the second article we're going to look at is the one we're going to look at in the breakout rooms, and different strategies. So the person who wrote this article is talking to her kids and said that they'd never taken risks before. So she wanted to see how, talk to teachers and state teachers of the year and find out what their strategies were. And these are 5 things that they came up with. Celebrate perseverance. Here's that power of yet. That's so important. I keep reading that as the power of Yeti, but that's another thing. Failure Fridays. All of this is listed in the article. So we're going to let you guys take a closer look at that here in a minute. So do the next slide, Anthony.
Okay, so we're going to put you into breakout groups. And this is what we're hoping you to talk about is, can you think of any other real life stories that are examples of the power of risk taking? Okay, there's tons of them out there, like I said. If you've ever read the Creativity Incorporated, that's a great story about Pixar's and how they encourage risk taking. I always like to share the story of Amazon and how they took a risk selling the most rare things that nobody else carried. And then eventually when everyone was going them looking for the rare things, then they started selling the things that everyone else did. They took a risk to sell what they call the thin tail, right? But we want you to have a chance just to talk about some real world risk things. Now, the second part is we're going to put you into 5 groups, okay? And as I start to do that, what we want you to do is choose one of those 5 things, and we'll put in your chat thing the list is 5. These here: the Celebrate Perseverance, Share Your Mistakes, Allow Retakes, Discover the Power of Yet, and Failure Fridays. Now, Failure Fridays, if you don't know what that is, the teachers on Fridays would share the story of someone who's successful and how they failed. And they would do a different one every Friday so they could learn these real world stories of that. So, and if you, what we're going to ask you to do is, we want you to go out online as you're talking to a group and find an image to represent that, okay? Just like we did for the beginning thing where you had an image to represent risk-taking, an image, you're you're neutral, or an image for being scared. We want you to find an image that represents one of those 5 things. So once you've had that image, we're going to want you to upload it to this form here, okay? We're going to put this again, like I said, this link into your chat room once you're in your breakout room, so that way you can click on it to get to it easily. So I'm going to stop the share here. just because I'm going to put you into some breakout rooms. Just chime in to let me know whose group is what. So let's start with number 1 here. I'll try and do things differently here. I'm working on different screens. All right. Who was number 1? Number 1 was?
It was perseverance, but our images aren't showing for some reason.
Oh, hold on. Let's refresh. Let's see if that's it.
We submitted 2, but we can visually describe them to you.
Well, it's refreshing. Maybe it'll show up.
Yeah, what's going on here?
We submitted 3. It was recommended we do 1. I was like, well, I already submitted 1, and so we all submitted 1.
Yeah.
Okay,
We're all
imagine
overachieving.
someone pushing a boulder up the hill.
Imagine that. That's what you would see. What might you see the first picture? We had the boulder. And one of the examples I gave was in programming. They keep persevering to get the program to run because it won't usually run. But I don't see it. And the other one,
That again.
it's going to come now. Come on, Google Form.
We were focusing on perseverance.
Well, we're persevering right now.
Yes.
We are.
Okay, well, our second one came up. So the boulder one was one, and then this is our real life one.
Which one? That one?
The doctors.
Yeah.
And
Oh, right.
That's actually an awesome image to show perseverance. One of my favorite things that I have in my posters, I don't know how many of you remember, I get it has to be like 5-6 years ago now, the class that printed the prosthetic arm for their classmate using the 3D printer. And
Yes.
there's a cover image of her with the hand, I believe it's pink, but it's like, and I just, every time we talk about that and we think about that, it's just really cool. And then there's a book called Rescuing Jessica that's out there about a woman who lost her legs in the Boston Marathon bombing and how she worked with her dog and was able to, recover and get some. But I love stories of this kind of stuff, and to see that, because I think kids relate to that immediately when they see the crutches or the brace. Obviously that brace he has on there is really substantial. It's pretty cool.
yeah, we
All
did
right.
talk about.
And then with the boulder one, I wonder why the boulder one didn't come up.
I don't know. I'll try to put it again so you can see it.
That'd be awesome. All right, who was number 2? Who was in group 2?
That was our group. So that was the one that says it's the yellow dog looking thing.
Okay, so this is the one I thought was Zoom bombing us.
Sorry. No. So this is from
I
a show
like
that
them.
I really like. It's a cartoon. It's for kids, but adults can like cartoons too, I guess.
It's a great show.
So this is Jake the dog from Adventure Time, and a lot of middle schoolers actually really like this show or have seen it. And so this is something I'd like to talk about in my classroom. It's just the dude sucking at something is the first step to being sort of good at something. So ours was the stating your mistakes, or however that was phrased, and
Share your mistakes.
share your mistakes. Thank you. And I feel like sometimes you just have to get it out there and put it up somewhere in your room and be willing to do something really dumb in front of your kids and be like, whoops, my bad.
Awesome. All right, group 3.
Boulder. The boulder's there now.
Oh, there we go. Cool. That's excellent. I feel like I'm right about here with the boulder right now with the what we're doing with teaching. Okay, group 3. Who's in group 3?
So that was allow retakes. So we were pretty literal. So we
The courage to try again.
try again, and success. And you can keep trying and trying again multiple times before you eventually get success.
Then we also added up the courage one from there, that it takes courage to try again. So, and we talked a lot about the importance of rapport and setting up the environment, and this goes for teachers as well as for students, of trying again and new things, of being able to ask the right questions. for yourself as well as for students to be able to build that to try again environment.
That's awesome. This reminds me of another story of the Boston Marathon. Bobby, I can't think of her last name right now. The first woman to run in the Boston Marathon without a number, she just jumped in it. And then the second woman, the following year with a number, like just that perseverance and that idea of keep on doing it. So you can show other people that they can do it, and they keep on trying, and eventually they came around to it. I think that's a great idea, that idea of courage of trying again. Okay, and our last group was Power of Yet, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I think we also had multiple images because we weren't sure if we should submit them individually or as a group.
Guess what? There's no
Okay.
rules.
No rules.
So which one do we want to start with? Elza, you want to go first there?
You're on mute.
So this is a picture of my mentor. He was a high school dropout, went back, got his GED, went to college, found he enjoyed teaching, became a teacher. And he is the sole reason that I graduated college, or I should say graduated high school, went to college and graduated, and became a teacher. He is my beacon for risk-taking and putting myself out there. Even when you fail, you can pick yourself back up and do it. So
That's awesome.
I love that.
Whoops. Okay, Einstein?
Yeah, I would say actually, I think Einstein is also a pretty strong role model. I was a physics major. I teach physics now. And I think he also represents the power of Yet pretty well because, when he was developing his theory of relativity, he was a lowly patent clerk, which was a pretty, it wasn't a very good job because the university kind of shunned him after he graduated because he had some interesting ideas and they didn't like him very much. But, he worked on his ideas when he was because he just had a lot of time on his hands at the patent office. And so I think that he represents like that sort of potential and that sort of keeping at it until you get it. So because he wasn't a big physicist yet at the time, he was just a patent clerk, but he would go on to become one of the greatest physicists of all time.
That's pretty awesome. And then we have whoosh. Make that bigger.
Super soaking.
Yeah. So I was talking about Lonnie Johnson, the person who invented the super soaker, and he's had lots of other patents, but the book points out that he invented the super soaker by accident. He was trying to build something else, and actually, because we were talking and I forgot what it was he was trying to invent. So he was trying to invent a cooling system, and he winded up, hooking up a pump and seeing the water come out.
Oops.
We lost you, Nola.
I thought, that this is one of the ways that I pointed out to my students how, somebody can create something, it's not quite what they wanted, but they, try again until they get where they need to be.
That's awesome.
I have a quick story that I just told my kids like the week before we left, but we have enough physics teachers here apparently, Kristen and Nicholas and I, and the guy who came up with the whole physics first idea is a guy by the name of Paul Hewitt. And we do physics first at our high school. And when this guy, he's old now, but when he was in high school, his teachers told him he was too stupid to go to college. So he ended up going into the military. And when he got out, he's in his mid-20s, he became a sign painter. And you see these classic pictures of him and his partner on scaffolds. And they started talking about the physics of, balanced forces and all this stuff. And he started getting interested in more and more in physics. And then he ended up going to college, becoming a PhD in physics education. And he's the one that came up with the whole idea that, you could teach physics without actually a lot of math and understand the conceptual physics part of it. So he's the whole reason why we teach physics in high school, I think sometimes, and not at the calculus-based level. But he was told he was too stupid to go to college. It's pretty amazing.
That's a great story.
That is a great story. I'm going to have a bite of brownie. So at this point, this idea of risk-taking, I don't think anybody can argue the fact that the 5 things recommended by Edutopia article are bad things to have in your classroom. And the business article from Inc. Really talks about stuff that I guess is how do you set up that environment, right? So we only have about 7 to 10 minutes left to really have this discussion, because we want to have a closeout thing that we want to show you. But does anybody want to share, like, what are they doing in their classroom to help encourage this? There was a great session. The last one was obviously about classroom environment. And we had great Twitter chats and some really great insights to this idea about making your classroom a safe space. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know how you want to look at it, you really can't talk about risk-taking without talking about environment and without talking about failure, okay, which is another topic that'll be coming up the next session. So, what do you do in your classrooms to help make it a haven? I know I can tell you this. I am king of number 1 from the Inc. article. I model risk-taking constantly, and they see me fail because, like I told you, for the past, so many years, I'm that guy who just jumps. And even with the kids, like, well, hey, how about we try to do this? There was one time we wanted to get aquariums for the library, and we just started trying to do it and put it together, and we failed miserably, mainly because administration went no eventually when they saw where we were going with it. But that's okay. The kids learned all this stuff of what to do and how to get a plan going and start to move in a direction, even though we hit a roadblock that we couldn't overcome at that time. Them seeing that really sets up this feeling in my library that the kids know that we can try anything. And not only that, I empower them from day one. I don't make up a single rule in my library. I don't come up with a single system. I ask the kids, what do we need to have to make this work? And they come up with it all. And because I empower them at that moment, from that point on, they know for the rest of the year when we're doing something that they can feel encouraged to suggest solutions or ideas of how to do stuff. And they also know that if I give like a challenge, that they can try to find every way to get to the end of that thing with that. If I didn't give a rule against it, they know they can just do it, to try it, to see if they can get there. So I'm just looking for anyone else, any ideas that maybe you do in your room that encourages any of these 10 things here. And I will TPT people, and I will just unmute you and say your name.
One of the things we do is mentoring with kids each week, but in that mentoring of having the good questions to letting them describe, like leading them to what are you proud of? What do you want to do? What are you interested in? But then what are the, what did you do well? What was easy for you? What was hard? What did you do when it got hard? There, and taking it from things they're interested in, and you can then turn it into academics, but that's the risk taking of just those personal connections and personal conversations every week. Doing all the things just like you said and talked about, that's a regular part of the environment, but adding that personal piece in of 10 minutes of mentoring every week for each kid just help, it just individualizes it. And then they get to open up and talk in maybe a more private setting versus, and then they can jump out and try it and not be as afraid.
Honest reflection is one of the biggest risks anyone, adult or student, could possibly take. And if you can get kids to do that and realize that we're not going to judge them or call them a failure or something like that, the rest of the environment and risk-taking is easy. It is. But that first piece there, I think, is very crucial. That's really huge. Anyone else? Michelle, since you came in late and didn't get to participate in a breakout group, I shall
go for it.
So what do you do? What do you do, Michelle? How do you encourage some risk taking in your classes?
We really cheer it on as a team, and they actually get bonus points on my board. I'm not extra credit, but we have a lunch bunch that comes in for lunch, and we play trivia and goof off during the week, and it's an invite only for lots of reasons, but we use it as a tag on. And when kids are taking risks, accepting failure, working well, doing something for others, we invite them. And one of those lunch bunches during the week, I buy lunch. So that doesn't mean it's a huge one, but I'll bring pizza or something like that. We're lucky enough we have a fund at school that we raise some money for, and it pays for that. Sometimes it's just cookies. Sometimes it's just hanging out with a treat. But the other piece is we really do a 2-step in me. So we encourage them to take a risk, to be brave in the classroom. And then we do a reflection activity where they get 2 compliments, and then it comes to them to reflect on. So it's called 2 in me, or 2 steps in me. So 2 of their peers will congratulate them or give them feedback on their risk they took, or the failure they overcame, or the new idea they brought forward. And then they come back and do a quick 1-sentence reflection. And it's gotten to kind of be a pretty constant thing in class, and it encourages it. It's actually been a positive piece with risk taking. So there you go. That's a couple pieces.
That's awesome. Anyone else? So I reflect a lot in front of the kids, just because, you know, I think it's important to model that kind of stuff too. And I've been doing STEM challenges in my library for the past, this is my 5th year in the library. And every year I've added one to make sure every grade level has a STEM challenge to do. That's kind of maker space-ish, but there's a goal in mind. And everyone that I used to design, I would give them plenty of time. And it was only last year that I realized that I needed to encourage this risk-taking even more with that. So I started putting a time limit on some of my activities. And what I would tell them is, all right, we're going to build, and I try to tie them into, for the younger kids, a book. So last year's was not Jack and the Beanstalk, okay? It's a great new picture book, and it's really funny. And what they had to do is they had to create a beanstalk. And they had to have the beanstalk be able to hold an egg at the top. And I told them, though, the beanstalk grew overnight, so you don't get weeks for this thing. You got to build it in the next 20 minutes in class, and we're going to judge it to see who gets the tallest and who can hold the egg at the highest point. And it was amazing to see the risks they started taking, and they all failed the first time. They all fell apart. And then the next week when they came back and said, same thing, 20 minutes, go. And to see what they took from their learning the first time and apply it the second time, and they got a little bit higher. We did do it 4 times in a row, because that's normally I would have given them 4 sessions to keep on improving what they were building. I just didn't know how I'd store beanstalks, to be honest with you, from week to week, from class to class. I didn't know how to move them all around. So this was my solution. But it turned out to be the neatest thing to see them get better and better and get higher and higher from taking these risks and learning from them. And then the best was they were practicing with putting little plastic eggs that a lot of people use at Easter time to hide treats in, right? Well, I had one that was a giant golden egg. It was this big. And they never asked, well, how big is the egg that's going to fit on the beanstalk? Rookie mistake. So on the very final day, I'm like, this is the final test. I brought out that giant gold egg. And not one of them said, don't test that on mine. They said, go for it, Mr. G. We want to see if our beanstalk can hold this. And you know what? About half of them did. So that just gave them even more encouragement to realize that they could do this. So it's just fun if you can give the kids a chance to do that kind of stuff. So let me click on the right screen here. So what we have here is, you know what, Debbie, this is you. I'm going to let you talk about it.
Okay.
No, it's all you. I'm eating some brownie.
I want some brownies. So we decided that we really wanted a takeaway from this idea. And it's really hard to demonstrate risk-taking behavior in this sort of environment. So we thought what we do is challenge everybody with the thought of coming up with one idea of something that you are going to do sometime, well, we were going to say before the end of the school year, but that's sort of a bust now, for most of us anyway. But something you're going to do in the next year that will either you are taking some sort of risk with your students, or that how you're going to promote kids to take risks in your classroom. So we're hoping that everybody will commit to doing one thing, and we're asking you to put your email in there, and we will follow up with you. So we will email you probably around September and ask you if you actually got the opportunity to try that thing that you are committing to doing now, and if you tried something else. And so my thought is that we're going to come up with some sort of Google Doc that we can all share with ideas that maybe we can learn from each other on different ways to take risks in our classroom. So we thought this would be a good takeaway. So we're hoping that everybody will take this survey and commit to something, leave your email, and we'll follow up with you and see where this all takes us. What do you think? Good idea?
Like
Cool.
it. Can you put the link in the chat as well?
I can do that.
Can you grab that off of there?
I will. I've got it up here.
And you know, we've talked about it a bunch of times. We really were, our initial thought was we were going to have you leave this and try something by the end of the year. Things don't always go the way we think they're going to go. So we're saying we'll reach out to you sometime next year, because who knows if we'll even be back in September. It might be October, might be November.
It
might be this time next year. Whenever we get back, we'll definitely be reaching out and just to see. And you know, we want to make sure you know that. Let me get on the next slide here. You know, you can reach out to us. There's our Twitter handles and our emails. If you have any questions about taking risks and want some support, if you email me, I'll get back to you pretty quickly. Unless it's Diane or Kristen, if somehow I miss their emails all the time and forget to get back to them somehow. I don't know how that happens, but obviously, hopefully you'll join us for the next set of stuff here in 2 weeks for promoting failure, because it goes hand in hand with this. These middle three, we really could have done as a 3-hour session with us all together, because you can't take risks and promote failure without having the right kind of environment. And if you're taking risks, people are going to fail. That's part of it. And then that, obviously that next one, but willing to rock the boat, that's going to be part of that risk taking too. So I think we have some great stuff here that's coming up that hopefully you'll be able to join us at. Any questions or things that anybody wants to throw out there at the last second? Anybody want to know exactly what kind of brownie mix I made here? It's the Ghirardelli like instant cup mug rolls. They're really good. 4 tablespoons of water. I think a minute or 65 seconds in the microwave. Delicious.
Sounds good, man. I want to go get some now, but I don't go to the store anymore.
But thank you all.
And before you leave, make sure you get Steve's email address, because he loves company in Chicago, and he'll take you to the best pizza place in the world called Pequod's, and you'll never stop thinking about the pizza ever again. I'm living proof of that.
Or you can go to Philadelphia and meet up with Anthony too, which is what I did last fall. So
yeah, we've had some great times here. So listen, you guys rock stars. Thank you so much for coming by tonight.
We'll see you later. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you guys.
Everybody.